Alright, so let me try one more time. Now this is gonna be like third take at least that I'm doing of this. The whole concept of the universe, multiverse, 42, you know, how our perception is shaped by it and we shape it, all of that. Yeah, all in one, mixed up. So my whole concept was that we have a language, right? We shape the language, we created it the way it is. It reflects our, you know, nature, how we see things, the duality of it. You know, the up and the down, the left and the right, yeah, the good and the bad. Everything is dual, yeah? That's kind of how we perceive our world, you know, life and death. You know, the 1 and 0 basically, you know, they're just on and off, on and off, on and off. And funny thing, this on and off thing. This is more or less the whole concept of the binary code, which is the basis of computer language. We form words out of these codes. You can call these octets if you look at 8 of them. Looking at bytes, so you can go into 8 times 8, so you build on that complexity. And you know, basically the whole idea of this, it is a kind of a language, and it's an interesting thing because our language is a language to describe a two-dimensional world out there. Sorry, three-dimensional world, right? So we've got the, you know, the back and forth of it, and maybe time, yeah. So what do I mean by that? Let's say if we look at you know, just simple facts, we got trees, we got dogs, you know, and things like this, right? Those are the facts of life. This is present simple, let's say, yes. And then we have the doings of these things, of these facts. So the dog is running around the tree, wagging its tail, and doing other things, right? So we got the facts and the doings of those facts, and then over time we got another aspect. If I'm to give it another look at in terms of you know, a kind of a picture to describe what I'm talking about, I'm gonna, let's say, look at it with another example of a two-dimensional being. You know, a being that exists in a flat plane, and let's say that being has this, you know, desk. It could be its entire world, right, or not. And this desk is getting cluttered because it's got all these papers, but you know, they organize it as nice as they can. It all is good until they run out of space. So I come along and I say, hey, listen, I can offer to you another dimension up. Yeah? So I put things on the shelf. For them, it literally disappears out of their world, out of their view of perception. They just can't even fathom of it. Eventually I run out of space, and guess what? The four-dimensional being comes along and says the same thing, and these objects then disappear out of my field of perception, and so it can continue, right? And the funny thing is, like I mentioned with, you know, this computer language, you know, the ones and zeros, you know, we can add these dimensions on top of other dimensions and just keep on increasing complexity. And while we cannot talk about these things very effectively using our everyday language because it's made to describe the simple world around us, we can describe higher dimensions in mathematics. And, well, computer language is quite mathematical, right? So we can talk about it that way. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm not very good at communicating in math. I just really suck at that. But computers are pretty good at this. And we are able to use these computer interfaces to really do it, right? And, you know, the amazing thing about the future that we have is that within our lifetimes, we can expect to be given the next layer that kind of transcends our brain, our mind, and we will be able to compute in the cloud, literally. At first it'll be simple things. I mean, we are already, you know, if you listen to people like Ray Kurzweil, he says that, you know, we already use these brain extenders all the time. We've got cell phones, we've got other things, right, that really become an extension of ourselves. We have a greater reach and we can do more thanks to these things. That's why we feel like a real loss when we don't have them with us. It's not just an addiction, it's an actual necessity, if you like. Yeah, we need these objects to extend our reach. Without it, we feel kind of constricted and shortchanged, if you like, right? So taking this a little bit further, right? With this whole idea of these multiverses, kind of lost track. Let me get my track back. One thing that kind of keeps bothering me, like everybody else who's been thinking about it, is this whole idea of, you know, the multiverse can be in fact the multi-simulation, right? We may not even really exist. Now, this is the amazing thing. I mean, if this is a simulation, that might mean that there are others outside of it, right? And you know, this language thing and the computer thing and so on, you know, I can really see how this will become a part of us, or we become part of it, extending our consciousness onto it, and with that the perception, right? We will expand our perception because of the new tool. Now, again, going back to Ray Kurzweil and the way he speaks about, you know, the development of our cortex, you know, with the first mammals, if they had been asked, and if they were able, in fact, to answer the question, hey, what are you gonna go do with all this brain cortex you got? It's like, you know, it seems like amazing stuff, right? Well, if they could have answered, which they couldn't, but if they could have answered, well, they would have said something like, well, some of us will go on to, you know, create music, language, humor, you know, space flight, science, whatever, right? All of the things we have today. And if you think about, if we really do extend our abilities with, you know, cloud computation, basically, and everything that follows that, imagine what will be available to us. Now, the one thing that really kind of blows my mind is that if we really do follow the track, then we have to consider the very real possibility that as we do that, we will achieve higher dimensions. Now, these dimensions are still a part of our maybe simulation. If this is a simulation, why not, right? But one of the concepts is that we are able to really live very long time, right? I mean, they're working on it right now. We already have some cool ways of extending our life and the quality of our life, which really is a lot for us. I mean, we are able to reach 150 years old probably with the current technologies. Some may be a little bit morally questionable at this point in time, like, for example, the infusion of stem cells, which comes from the placenta of a, you know, newborn, from the umbilical cord. But just like with obtaining stem cells in the beginning, from the egg cells, eventually then, you know, they took them from the from the bone marrow, and then later they got it from now they're getting it from, I believe, fat cells, right? So, you know, it went to something which is definitely a morally acceptable proposition, pretty painless. We might be able to do something similar within a very short time, without the moral problems and hazards. So that's one aspect, and that really does improve quality of life. There's this whole aspect of being younger because you have new blood basically in you. That's the one thing. And second thing is, of course, all the drugs which are linked to reduced caloric intake, or rather the effect of it, stemming from the drugs that come from the treatment of sugar disorders. And then one more, which I just can't remember right now. Point is this: we are able to get them most likely, and this is the amazing thing, right? If we go far enough, we might have, you know, full digital, you know, awareness eventually, you know, with digital copies of ourselves, and then we may live indefinitely. And here is the kicker, for me anyway: if we live long enough, you know, be the survivors of the simulation, we just might win a place out there, out of the simulation.
I wonder what that is like. I have to finish the video, it's like 10 minutes, but you know, that'd be interesting. You know, if we're able to expand our consciousness out of this dimension to the next, and the next, and the next, and the next, and then eventually even find our place out of this simulation, if it is one. That's an interesting concept.